emodels.co.uk. Make something awesome.
Hello, I'm Chris from Gross Models, and this is the continuing build of the C-141B Starlifter for emodels.co.uk. The progress so far in the first part of this build, basically built most of the plane. Now it's too big to fit into the camera, but there you go. It's a 1:144 scale kit, in case you missed it. Basically, this is what I've done so far. There are little porthole windows on the fuselage there. The canopy on the front is a clear piece which I haven't attached yet, which will need to be attached before painting. Now, because I don't normally do planes, this is the first decent plane size that I've done, I completely forgot about putting in a nose weight. Now, I know it's a thing when you're doing kits. I've known it was a thing. It is mentioned in the manual to put a 10-gram nose weight in the front, but they don't supply it. I don't know why they don't ever do this with kits, but they didn't. Now, as I've already stuck it all together, obviously breaking it open to put it in is going to be somewhat tricky, but I am going to be attaching the canopy at a later date, so I figured I could probably get away with putting a weight in there. Now, what I've got is several actually. This is a 12-gram lead disc, basically, which I thought was going to be just about the right size if I cut it in half and put it in. It's actually a little bit big, but bearing in mind, say, how much room I'm going to have in there, I think I can use the back wall and possibly some of the base. I'm going to be painting the inside of this black anyway, so I'm going to try sort of cutting and moulding, and it's lead, so it's quite easy to manipulate. So I'm going to try shaping this to fit in there and hopefully get away with it. If it is a little bit light, it's a little bit light, but you know, we'll see what I can get away with. So I'm going to play around with that, see if I can get that shape to fit in there. And then I've got a few other pieces, let's say, ready, cut off the sprue and ready, sitting in my little drawer of waiting. Some of the undercarriage mainly, with the covers over the undercarriage there and some of the bits from that. To do the painting, I have decided that I'm going to paint the, turn it over, interior of these in the silver. So I need to do basically all of the inside bit there and the insides of the doors that I haven't put on there yet. So I'm going to be painting those next, and then I'll be masking off this whole area basically, and then I can do the exterior. Now the bottom part is in the basic grey, and then the top has the camo on it, which obviously I've got the paints ready to do. So first up, I'm going to play around with the nose cone, see if I can get that on there, in there somehow, and then obviously attach that back in place once that's black inside. Then I can mask off the windows and do the paint on the entire surface. Obviously got to mask off the little windows on there as well, but it's because they're attached from the inside, you've got no choice but to do them before you assemble it. So that's what's happening now. Obviously I'll show and update what I can, but I'm not going to show you me trying to cut this into bits, because that's going to be quite boring. But once that's in and black, then I'll show you putting the canopy on, which hopefully will be the next part. But if you've watched any of my videos in the past, I'm sure you'll be aware that my plans never actually work. So what you see next might well be something completely different, but hopefully we'll see you soon with that bit. So, and there's the lid shaped to fit inside the cockpit. Now the cockpit, instead of painting the inside black, I painted the inside of the cockpit black. So the windows are still sort of shiny, but you can't see anything inside it, because this was actually bigger than I thought it was going to end up. So it actually pretty much fills the entire cockpit there. So I figured the best way of disguising it is just to cover it up completely. So the windows are going to be completely black, but still shiny. So I think that will look okay once it's done. Obviously the bits that aren't windows are going to be painted over anyway to match the camo there. So I'm going to use some normal super glue to glue that in place, and then glue that over the top as well. Next up, I've been doing the last bit of priming on the little covers of the hatches, the wheel covers. So I need to paint the insides of those that aren't really going to be seen in the chrome as well, so it matches the other pieces. And I've got the little bits to put onto here, so I'm going to do that now. These are the outside wheel covers, so I need one bit to go one end and the other bit to go the other end. So again, just using extra thin on these and just covering the end where it's only a small amount of paint that we're covering with these. I'm not worrying about removing it to glue over, because the glue will eat through that small amount. So I'm getting these glued on, so parallel to the ends and parallel to the top side as it says in the instructions. Getting that one in and the other one the other side. Making sure they're both horizontal with each other and with the deck there, so I'll leave that aside to dry, and then that's another bit done. So I'll get this glued up and all together on there, and then it will be time to start the main painting, which is going to be fun. So I'll get that ready. Going to be priming it in the grey, and then starting with the underside, basically the base grey colour, and then putting the camo over the top. So I'll get this glued in. I say super glue, nothing special there, and normal canopy glue for the canopy, and I'll see you in a moment. Or actually even sooner than that, because I realised that I haven't actually shown any masking. So I'm using some thin Tamiya masking tape. Basically I get a piece off, stick it down, and then using a sharp knife cut the shape I need. Now for these, obviously I don't know exactly what shape they need to be. I can sort of eyeball it and try and get it about right. What I'm doing is cutting smaller than I need to be, so I can sort of layer it up. So if I get rid of the bit down the side there, the front window has got a slight shaping to it, so I'm just going to try a shape like that, which is too big at the moment, although the height is about right, so I can get an idea where it's going to be. What I'm actually going to do is basically cut that one in half. So hopefully I can get this on camera. I can get one half. Actually, it's a little bit too tall. Let's get rid of the very top of that. It's about that much too tall. So I'm going to get that positioned on one side of the window. Get that lined up in there, and then get the other side positioned on the other side of the window. Obviously it doesn't matter about the overlap in the middle, because masking's masking, and apart from that we're sorted. Just manoeuvre that around a little bit more, and that is pretty much that. Do that for all of the other windows, obviously little circles for the side windows there. For the undercarriage masking, I'm going to use a slightly thicker tape and basically just sort of feed it in and wrap it round a bit, pretty much like that, but obviously a little bit more accurately. So I'll get that done and then get it primed in the grey and then be ready to start with the actual colours. So I'll see you in a moment. After priming it, it became apparent that there were still some sort of fairly major seam lines and problems in it. So I've used a combination of some Tamiya cement on the ones that weren't too bad, which is why these bits are shiny, and some sprue goo on here, which is basically Tamiya extra thin with some sprue melted into it to create a material that's basically plastic, which I'll show you quickly is just a white, because I use white sprue, which gives a nice sort of liquid that when the glue evaporates just dries into a white solid, just touching up a couple of extra bits, which is sandable, paintable, and will be basically indistinguishable from the plastic itself. There's one little bit that I haven't done, which I was just going to do on camera, if I can get the camera position right, just on this edge of this engine. So basically just putting in a blob of it, letting it dry and fill into the seam there. Now it will be proud of the plastic, so it will need sanding down once it's dry. I'll start doing the rest of it in a moment, starting off with a rough sandpaper and gradually working down to a fine sort of polish, and then obviously repriming over the top again, but worth doing to get rid of the seam line to make it a one uniform piece. So actually a little bit there, still a little bit rough, so I'm going to add a little bit more on there as well. Then when that's dry, basically tomorrow, I can sand it down and then go over it again, and then I'll be ready for starting the actual coloured painting. But I thought I'd just give you a quick update on that step, just so you know what's going on and basically what you can do if you've got some gaps. If it was a bigger gap, then obviously I might need to fill it with a more normal filler, but sprue goo does it just fine on just the small touch up areas. So I'll leave you that. I'll get that sanded down and reprimed, and then we'll start on the actual paint next time I see you. Well, that's the first pass back through primer after filling it in, and it's much better. It's not quite there yet. You can't really tell until you get the primer back on, because the white against the grey does give a different effect. But the wing join is pretty much okay. I will sand that down a little bit further. The cockpit bit, I do need to sand down the edges a little bit more and blend those in. But all in all, it's getting there. So yeah, I think one more pass and then that'll be ready. So nearly. Right, after sanding it down and repriming it, I'm happy with how that's come out. It's all blended in quite nicely. I've still got the masking on the cockpit windows, because obviously I still need to do the painting in the colour, but that's the priming all done. So I'm going to be using, for the main base, Vallejo Dark Ghost Grey. Now they don't do the official colour that's required according to the sheet is Grey Azure, which they don't do in the Model Air colour. So this is a very close match. It's sort of a bluey grey, which is the main colour, and then I'll be using olive green and dark green for the two shades of green on the camo. But first of all of it is covering in the Ghost Grey, and then we'll start masking for the camo. So I'll paint it and then show you the masking. Okay, that's all the grey base coat put on, obviously all over the top, all over the base as well, so that's all done with that. Now, for the camo itself, it's slightly challenging because the instructions are not quite right. Now we've got on here the colours called out for the patterns and everything else, but they don't quite match up. Now if you see, for instance, the bit at the back here, where you've got the light green that comes over from the two sides, obviously on the left side you can see it comes down there, on the right side it comes down there, which is fine, but the front is wrong. We've got the dark green and then a patch of light green, which on the left side you can see the dark green with the patch of light green, but on the right hand side there is no light green at all. It should obviously come down, as you can see it coming down on the side there, so it must come down at least some of the way, but it's not there. So I'm not going to be able to do an exact duplicate of this because physics won't let me. So what I am going to do is use this as a guide and just basically do my own thing with it. So it'll be along these lines, but not exactly the same. So what I'm going to do, as I say, this is the grey that is the standard grey for the undercoat. What I'm going to be doing is masking off the grey and leaving the green bits. My plan is to mask off all of the grey that's here and leave both of the greens. Then I'll paint all of that in the light green, and then over the top of that I will mask the light green off again and just paint the dark green over the top. Now the reason I'm doing that this way rather than say masking and then removing then masking again is because some of the greens do match up, say, against each other. So rather than having to mask one side and then mask the other side exactly and match it up, I think it's easier just to mask for instance the bottom of the grey, and then I can mask just once more across there and not have to mask exactly opposite sides to match it all up. So I'm going to get that done. I'm going to be using a combination of masking Tamiya masking tape and blue tack. My plan is to use the blue tack basically for the edges. So I'm going to mask off the major areas, basically all the underside and the big areas, but the edges I'm going to be using, for instance, sort of like that, on the edges of the colour. For instance, I'll start on this bit on the right wing here where you can see. So basically I'm going to be going for this sort of shape. So I'll basically try and match-ish what I've got down there. Probably going to need a little bit more than that, but just to give you the idea, I'm going to do it all off camera because there's no need to show everything again. So basically I'm getting the sort of shape, so this will stay grey and this will be in the dark green when I come to do the dark green, but I'll be doing light green over it anyway. The reason for using the blue tack is it gives a nice sort of feathered effect, where it'll be very light underneath as the paint goes in, getting darker as it gets towards the end, so you don't get a definite solid line. You just get almost a feathering in of the masking, which is quite a nice effect. So I'm going to not do that on yet. I'll be putting the masking tape down first where I can, and then blue tack, to the edges, going to roughly this pattern. Pretty much all of the underside and the underside of the wings aren't going to be coloured, so I'll just be putting masking over all of that. The engines themselves again aren't painted, so pretty much all of this from below there and the bottom part of the fuselage itself is not coloured. A little bits in places, but most of it is plain. So I'm going to get that all masked off and then do the light green and show you that when I've got it masked up. So see you in a moment. Pre-painted but masked. It looks like a blue tack snail has gone crazy over it, but that's pretty much what I'm going to be aiming for. Now obviously the bits that are all covered are going to stay grey. The other bits I'm going to spray in light green now and then go over with the darker green once I remask a bit more. So yeah, I thought I'll show you that up front before, and then you can see what it looks like after stage 2. So, and that's the light green, which actually came out quite dark, but the other green is a different green. The dark green is more of a sort of grey green by the looks of it. So what I'm going to do now is leave most of this masking in place, or pretty much all of this masking in place, but add some more to it. So what I'm going to do, for instance, this front piece, I need a line about here, where this bit is going to stay in the light green and the front piece is going to be the darker. So what I'm going to do is remove this blue tack, hopefully, which with any luck you'll be able to see gives, say, a nice edge that's sort of feathered but not a sort of soft edge. So I'm going to remove some of this and some of that up to about there, I should think. Oh, a bit further apparently. Go to there on that side and go back a bit further on that side to about there. So let's peel that off. To there. Keep hold of that because I'll be using that in a moment. I'm going to put some more masking over there. So basically enough to wrap around and cover what I've already done. A bit more, a little bit further up. So the bits that I'm covering now are going to stay in this green. There we go. Make sure I get all of it. Don't want to have any extra greens appearing down there. That's that, and that's got to go a little bit further around that side. Sorry. So that's that, and then I shall reapply the blue tack snails around the edge here again, just to add that extra piece of, let's say, non-straight line. Make sure I cover the edges there. Do that in a few other places as well to give me the second colour scheme. So what I'm doing here is basically I've done this bit and that bit, so now I'm going to cover over this piece here and just paint the darker patch on the front on all of this, so these greens will be now covered. So I'll get that done and then get it painted in the darker green. So I'll see you in a moment. Well, that's it painted. It's not dry, but it's dry enough that I can get some of this masking off, and we'll see how it looks. Now I've chosen this bit to start with. The rest of it's all still covered, purely because I know it's got the three colours, hopefully, underneath. So if we peel off this, with any luck on camera, that should show up as being different greens underneath here and grey underneath there. Now this blue tack is not wasted, because although it's covered in paint, if you sort of squish it and spread it and pull it around a bit, it's obviously only a very thin layer of paint over a blob, so it's actually perfectly usable again. So I'll get rid of that. Now let me peel off some more. Let's say the paint is dry. It's been about half an hour since I painted it, which is quite a long time for some of this Vallejo air to be set but not solid, if you know what I mean. So I'm hoping that I can just give you an idea what it's going to look like, because obviously I'm not going to film peeling off all of the masking paper. Can't get a grip on any of this. There we go, that's got an edge. Now the nice thing about using the paint out the bottle, if I do have any problems with it, say peeling up and causing problems, it is all just stock colours. There's no custom mixes or anything like that in there. So if I do need to touch it up, it's just a simple matter of grabbing it out the bottle and trying again. So let me just try, hopefully, and get rid of this bit, remembering that there's little protuberances on some of these wings. off the bottom of the wing as well. Okay, and there we have it. It's still on there obviously, but come on. Obviously I don't want to scratch the paint underneath by trying to grip it, but it's all got to come off. There you go. Worry about that bit underneath later. Right, so there you have it. That's how the camo is going to come out, and it's quite nice. I'm quite happy with the way that's come out. I deliberately didn't do a big thick solid layer, especially on this lighter green. It's got some patching and shading to it, and obviously the bit underneath is all just the plain grey. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm going to, as I say, spend a little time getting rid of all the masking, and then I'll be able to show you that together. Then we'll be putting the bits back on, putting the undercarriage on, and then some light weathering. So it's approaching the end. See you soon. That's all the masking tape off, quite a bit, and reclaimed most of my blue tack. And the kit itself, right, I always knew there was going to be some touching up to do, but all in all it's fine. There are, mainly on the top body piece, some bits where obviously the tape layers, where the tape layers obviously didn't quite overlap or didn't stick down where they overlapped, so I've got a bit of touching up on the grey to do on there, which isn't a problem. Everything else is actually mostly as I intended. One, for some reason, little problem with the grey has come up with the masking tape, but just in one spot for some reason. Don't know, might have been a spot or something on there when it was painted, but the primer's still there, so I'll just go again, brush over that with the grey. So a little bit of touch up. For the first time I've taken the masking off of the windows, and that's come out quite well with the black painting on the inside there, so I'm happy with that. Was a little bit concerned about that, how that was going to come out, but that's done as intended. And the windows on the side of fuselage, taking the masking off of those as well. So yes, a little bit of touch up to do, and then let that dry properly. Then I can put the fronts on the engines. Still got masking tape all over my fingers there as well. Little bit's going to be everywhere for weeks. So yes, as I say, touch up a few problem areas, but not as many as I feared. More than I'd like, but there we go, can't have everything. Last bits to put on the engines and the undercarriage, and then not weathering, as I said, decals. I've got the decals to do, so I might do those before I put the undercarriage on, because again it's just something else to get potentially knocked and cause problems with. I might find a new camera angle as well, because it's obviously going to have to be a bit further away now. So yeah, I'll say pull out the brush and use the paints that I've been using the thing for the airbrush, just straight through and brush paint those on, cover them over, then we'll be ready for the next bit. Right, all the touch up of the paint has been completed, and I've done some detail painting on it as well. There's things like the little black line around the tail and the nose cone, which wasn't actually mentioned in the instructions or the paint thing, but obviously it's pictured on the box art, so I've done that in black with the grey marking on there. Then I've given it a quick gloss coat with some pledge, just to give it a slightly shiny finish, which won't be the finished model. Obviously I'll be doing more of a matte coat on it, but need that for the decals. Now the decals, as I'm sure everybody's aware how to do decals, but I'll run through it quickly. Basically using the instructions and everything, you find out where they've got to go. I'm going to put the first one on. The 15 is the first one for some reason, which goes across the front here. So I found it on the paper here. I'm using a knife just to cut it out, and then picking it up with some tweezers, off camera, just dunking it into water, just some warm tap water. It sort of loosens it off. Moving the instructions, the other decals out the way. Dry off a little bit on some tissue. So I've got the decal ready to go there. I'm just going to put on my visor so I can see exactly. Yeah, there is an up and a down on it. So it needs, there's writing, it's basically a set of numbers, which goes according to the instructions here, across, where we're going, yeah, just in front of where that the lump appears, so it's going to go about there. So that should be able to be moved. Yep, that's moving on the paper now, so I'm just going to hold the paper and then use the edge of the tweezers just to push that into place. Now a very small decal like this, you don't need to worry too much about anything, but I am going to use some microset just to make sure it beds down properly, and that just helps it affix in place. It will also help if it was going across any bumps or curves. It helps it bed down and flatten out to the surface. Now when the decals are done and dry, I'll be using the microsol to again get rid of the transparent pieces of the decal, because at the moment obviously you can still see the outline of it. It's not just the numbers, but the microset will the microsol will help that to finally get rid of all of the sort of backing of the decal. So I'm going to go and do the rest of the decals. There's obviously quite a few on here. Lots of the lines I am going to use the decals for instead of trying to mask and paint, because they're just awkward shapes. Basically I've got a few bits to do on the top here. Basically the wings, that's a bit, and the back wings are the lines. And then on the coloured page here, which hopefully not going to get too many reflections from because it's still in the plastic, we've got all the labelling flags and identification numbers, surrounds for the doors, and the USAF stars, which look like they go on just on the left wing, on the top and the bottom, strangely enough. So there's nothing on the right wing. I don't know, I only do what I'm told. So I'm going to get that done. I'm not going to film all of that because this video is getting long enough as it is. Once they're all on, I'll give it another little gloss coat just to make sure they're all setting properly, and then onto some light weathering. So see you soon for that. Okay, point of note about the lines, they're not the right size. I've sorted out the ones mentioned in the instructions and put them in the shape on the table here, which is just out of shot. Let's move that around a little bit. There you go. So they basically are pictured like that. That one there, that one's down the edge, that one down that edge. But for instance, this one goes along here. It should be all the way on there, not hanging over the edge. That one again goes on there, and again should end about there. The two sides are probably about twice as, maybe just about right, possibly. So I've decided what I'm going to do is put them on basically as they are, overhanging the ends, and then I can trim them down after they've been applied. That way I can make sure they do line up. That may be what they intended. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and think that's how they intended it to be done. I'm just going to take a look at the bigger ones. For instance, number 38 should be along this front wing. 38 is one of those, and that's, oh, that one's just about the right length actually. 36, they go across there. So that one is probably a little bit long. 637 is that one, so that's probably about right. That's, yeah, definitely too long because it's only got to go to the middle here. So yeah, some of them do seem to be off-sized and some of them do seem to be about right. But I figure the best way is to do it as I just said. I'll start in the middle with, where have we got? This back one I think I'll start with, 28, which is this long one. So I'll put that where it needs to be there, which is just the side of all these marks here. So that one goes about there. Then I'll work away from that down the two sides, then up and across, and then trim them down. So I'll let you know if there's any other things to make a note of, but other than that, hopefully see you when all the decals are on. Almost finished the decals of the lines. I haven't put any of the other detail pieces on yet, but I thought I'd just again show the problem with the lining up. The long line along here should end there. It should come from here. Just excuse me. Where the bend is a different piece, so it should end here, and then we've got another straight to go across there, which is about the right length. Actually no, sorry, that's too long because that comes from the inside of this, so it goes from there to there, so that's too long. This is obviously much too long, so once the decals are set on there and dry, I need to cut, say here, and take off this entire patch on both sides, and then the new one just goes straight across the bottom from there. On the tips of the wings, it wasn't too bad actually. There's again just a bit too long on this one and a little bit too long on that one, but not bad at all. Now the ones on the back tailplane I have cut down to size, so they actually fit on nicely. I'm assuming that they make them deliberately too long in case they get broken or cut or whatever. So yeah, still stuff to do, but thought I'd give you a quick update halfway through and see when it's all done. Right, all the decals are on. It's got lots of bits around doors, and mainly the black lines are the important bit. Tail fin's got a few bits on it. Now the decals on this are a bit strange. They don't seem to work the same way as many decals that I've dealt with previously. Although I've been using the microsol on it, you can still see the non-painted part, so I'm hoping that a matte varnish on that will dull that down and blend it in a little bit before I do some weathering. But before I do that, I'm going to finish assembling the kit. Now on the underside we've got the wheels to go on and the covers, so I'm going to get that on now using Tamiya Extra Thin. Basically I've got the two wheels, the main wheels, to go in about there, and then we've got the cover to go over like that. That is the right one. Basically goes on there like that, and the other side goes over there. Then on the top side we've got the little bits to go over the little hole through here that you can see, and obviously the front wheel and the front cover as well. I'm not going to film all of that obviously because it's not much to really show, but I'm going to put the first wheel on just to give you the idea. The main fixing points are the whole of that back piece and that little pin there. Obviously the back piece touches the back and the pin goes into that area there. So just hold that for a few seconds, make that sit down on there. Then I'll leave it obviously up the wrong way to make sure it's set before I put any weight on it, making sure they're about level. I need to go backwards a little bit on that. These aren't a perfect fit either. I'm not sure exactly what's what with these, but we do the best we can. So I'll get those on, then get the covers on as well. then get it matte varnished and be ready to start the weathering. So I'll see you with that in a moment. And that's all the decals on, covered in microsol and then given a matte varnish. Overall quite happy. The details for the doors and the window portholes do actually make it pop out a bit, as to the details on the rear, you know, tail fin. The edges haven't come up like they normally do with microsol rather, that sort of dissolves the carrier, so they don't look as good as I would hope. But anyway, what I'm going to do now, also I've put on the undercarriage, glued that all in place, so the model is actually built and completed now. I'm going to give it all a light airbrush over with some very thin smoke wash, Tamiya smoke in thinner basically, just to give everything a blend in and dirty it all down just a little bit. I'm not going to be weathering this one heavily except for in the undercarriage bays. I'm going to be going a bit darker in those. But first of all, I'm going to start on the underside of this with the smoke, see how it comes out, and then I'll say lightly on the top as well. Again, airbrushing I can't really show you, so I'm going to get that done off camera and then come back and show you what's what. But the decals all on. There's even little ones that don't stand here, and no steps on the sides of the engines. It's quite a lot of small detail for, I'd say, a big kit, although it's a 144 kit. But I'll get the wash done and then worry about some finer detail weathering. Almost there. I've given it a light wash over with Tamiya smoke and put in some detail weathering, just in a bit of the engines, which I'm going to go a little bit heavier on. And what else have I done? I've done a little bit of sort of dirt and grime in some of the panel lines, so you can see some of them coming out a little bit darker, and also a bit more in the undercarriage base, just to show that they're going to be the dirty bits. Other than that, it's almost completed. I don't want to go heavy weathering on it because it's, I say, an in-use plane rather than an old wreck or a really old abandoned plane. So I'm going to do a little bit more, I say, growing up the engines, and then I'll be showing you the completed model. So see you in a moment. And there we have the kit completed. All in all, quite good fun. I haven't built many sort of full-size planes before. I've only done a couple of small ones, so I'm quite happy with the way it's come out. The main problem with the kit is the decals. They don't seem to be sticky on. They stick fine, but the carrier film on it doesn't seem to want to disappear, and it's left some little white splotches, which if I was going to weather it heavier, then obviously they'd be covered. But being a plane that's sort of designed to be still in service and, you know, still in use, obviously I don't want it filthy dirty. But all in all, it's quite a good fun build. It took me a bit longer than many because I just wanted to get it right, but yeah, I think anyone would quite enjoy building this. Say a few minor problems here and there, but all in all, it's fine. I'll change the camera in and put some, say, more detail shots in, but all in all, thanks for watching, and enjoy building.